Okay, today we will speak about sustainability. Before that, we will speak about the CIA chief's visit to Moscow, Radcliffe visit to Moscow. Now, America has been negotiating with Russia and China, Russia and Iran, and none of these countries trust these people who negotiated with them. It's if you take Donald Trump's son-in-law or Mark Rubio or anybody. So that means they have to send the CIA's leader to negotiate because he has built relationship with the chief at intelligence chief in Moscow, and that is one of the reasons. So there is a possibility that there will be a winding down or de-escalation of these conflicts in Ukraine or in Iran. America might try to de-escalate the conflict in Ukraine. The CIA had 20 bases near the Russian border, and they want to destabilize Russia. Now, if you take the American economy is K-shaped economy. Sri Lanka's economy is also K-shaped economy. Right? In America, it is military defense complex and the IT industry, which is fueling the American economy. And now it is estimated that worldwide AI industry is $7 trillion have been invested. That is worldwide, not necessarily in America. And people think there is a bubble there. So some of the investments came from the banks, and some of the people who are knowledgeable about the AI industry thinks that they are going to be run on the banks. Right? So the American economy may possibly be a bubble. Right? So that we have to watch out for the run on the American banks, and some of the mid-sized American banks possibly will go bankrupt. So that we are going to have a bubble thing, and Americans have come to the end of the war. Whether it is in Ukraine or whether it is in Iran, they can't go further, and they were trying to put these sanctions, and this is not. The Russians and the Chinese are not going to cooperate with the Americans, though these sanctions will not work. So there is a possibility that, right, there will be a de-escalation in the war. Okay? So that's something we have to watch. Now, when it comes to sustainability, you have to watch for many things. First thing, you have to watch for ecological footprints and biocapacity. And that is something which has to be incorporated into your accounting system. Okay? Second thing is that you have to get rid of petroleum subsidies. Now, world petroleum subsidies is close to $1 trillion, and Iran gives petroleum subsidies because of sanctions. So petroleum subsidies is destructive, right? And it is non-sustainable. Then we take the agricultural subsidies also, that is also come to about, in the world, it comes to about $1 trillion. So if you want to have a sustainable economy, you have to remove petroleum subsidies. In Iran economy, because of sanctions, there are a lot of petroleum subsidies, or fuel subsidies. They can't remove it. If remove it right now, if they remove it right now, there could be unrest in Iran. Right? So if you want a sustainable system, you have to get rid of the petroleum subsidies and get rid of agricultural subsidies. Okay? And we have to be concerned about ecological footprints and biocapacity. That's three things. Then we have this trade friction between Canada and America. What America was trying to do was, America was trying to de-emphasize on renewable energy, and they wanted to control the petroleum market, right? So that is what Mr. Jackson Hinkle said about this. Jackson Hinkle he is a journalist, a young journalist in America, and he has been sanctioned by the American government. If you take George Galloway, he was a person in the, at least 5 times he was in the British Parliament, and he was on sanction. So if you are speaking about against the war in America and Europe, you are bound to get sanctions. So that means we have to go into 2 books which I mentioned earlier, The Animal Farm and 1984. Right? I think 1984 has become much more important because the IT industry, and that is when it comes to the war industry in America, it's a fraud. So there are few people in America and Europe who have been sanctioned because they are giving the true picture of the war. When it comes to Ukraine doesn't have weapons. Some money which was channeled to Ukraine to fight the war, it have been stolen. For the next 6 months, Ukraine doesn't have money. It is reported that Ukraine doesn't have money to fight the war because that has been stolen, and some of these monies have gone back into America. So if the American dollar is going to fall, then there will be a severe run on the American banks, because these people only want to earn money. They are not Americans, or they have no love for America. They are only money. So in Ukraine they don't have people. They have only drones, and they are trying to recruit women. And if you look at the birth rates in Ukraine, it has gone down a lot. So as far as sustainability, Ukraine nation, it is in real bad shape. So they are going to recruit women into the army. That means Ukraine is dying in a way. When it comes to the young people, when it comes to the birth rate in Ukraine, they are in real bad shape. So I talked about sustainability, right? I talked about then we have to go for this. Instead of get rid of fractional banking, that means you have to go to sustainable steady state economics. Once you have reached certain level of consumption, that means you have to get rid of fractional banking. So we have to emphasize on steady state economics. Now in Canada supplied most of it was in the supply side economics, because the Americans try to bully Canada. Canada is sending its aluminium to Europe. The reason why is that there is a carbon pricing mechanism in Europe. The Canadian aluminium is manufactured mostly using hydropower, whereas if you take China and things like that, the aluminium is used mainly using coal and so forth. So because of you have taxes, carbon taxes, Canada has found it easier to sell, I mean, it is more easier to sell their aluminium to Europe. So if you look at the devastation in Tibet and Nepal, that is also, partly because of these glaciers are melting. So whatever Americans say about global warming, whatever Donald Trump takes, and Donald Trump is trying to relax all these environment laws so that you can have economic growth. So Donald Trump is facing a lot of problems, whether it is in the AI industry, which is tied to the war, and it is also tied to the genocide industry in the world. So we talked about a lot of things: ecological footprints, biocapacity, agricultural subsidies, petroleum subsidies, and we looked at what is going to happen in the future. If you take industries, if you want to export stuff, you have to move away from coal and diesel and move towards renewable energy much as possible, because otherwise whatever you manufacture, they are going to be carbon taxes. If you want to sell things in Europe. Now America is moving away from environment issues, but that's a temporary thing. When Donald Trump is gone, the American system also will move towards this reduction of carbon. The environment issues will be becoming, whether you do export-import trade, and most countries will be forced to move away from coal and diesel. Not in America. In America, for a temporary, now it looks like Donald Trump is going to lose the election. Not this election, but if you take the midterm polls, Donald Trump is going to lose both the Senate and in the Congress. So his leadership will be totally over, and the Republican Party will desert him. And if you take the Democratic Party in America, some of these people are moving to a social agenda. So socialism is a dirty word in America, but it's no longer the socialism coming back to India. If you take Michael Hudson and Richard Wolff, they say before 1940s there were a lot of socialist politicians, and there was witch hunt against the socialists and communists in America. But in Democratic Party there will be a crisis, because there will be split between neoliberal people and socialists. So in the future you will have this environment movement. So we touched upon a lot of things. Visit of CIA chief to Moscow. I touched upon ecological footprints and biocapacity. I touched upon agricultural subsidies and petroleum subsidies. If you want to go for a more sustainable system, we have to go for this renewable energy, right? And if you take the weather in the world, because the temperature is rising, if you take rain or drought or anything like that, it becomes severe. But the American president doesn't accept this. So these environment things will be of concern. So I touched upon other things also. Getting rid of fractional banking. So when you get rid of fractional banking, you don't have to do it immediately. You can increase the amount of fractional banking, amount of reserves left in banks, as when your ecological footprint comes close near your, that could be one criteria, that when it comes close to the biocapacity, then you can de-emphasize the financial industries, and you can concentrate more on the primary producers and so forth. So that means then you have to go back to this concept of rent. Now if you take Janis Varoufakis, he talks about this. If you take this online trade, he says it is not capitalism, it is mostly rent-seeking activities where the IT firms take something like 20 to 40% rent on the goods they sell, and other people say it is still capitalism. So that's a different argument. So if you localize the economy possibly, and if you de-emphasize the financial sector, which I label the financial sector as predator, then you go into a more sustainable mode of economic consumption. So now we are talking about profits in banking and things that they are all part of the financial sector. I use this tropic level of money that comes from steady state economics, and financial sector is, in my way of looking at it, predator economics. And in steady state economics they don't use that label because it is offensive, right? Another thing, I am saying racism is okay as long as it doesn't promote violence, because in name of racism we are going for this woke culture, WOKE. Even if you look at some of the literature which may have racial undertones, you should not ban them, because that represents part of the history. So you have to know about, Tom Sawyer. You have to know about what Mark Twain has written. Even it might have racial overtones, right? If you take in some of the rhymes, nursery rhymes, they also have they're supposed to have certain racial overtones, and if you take the woke culture, wokeism and woke culture, they are trying to censor this. So I am saying it is okay, because you have to know your history, as long as that so-called racist literature doesn't promote violence. To know your history, you can't ban this so-called racist literature, right? Because that shows the struggle in history. So I talked about a lot of things. I talked about what is going to happen to America most likely, and in America you might have a severe economic crisis, and then you will have a severe run on the banks in America. It all depends on how the American IT industry, AI industry has borrowed a lot of money from the banking sector. So if there is a crisis in the AI industry, the financial sector in America is highly, highly vulnerable. So I talked about many things, right? CIA's chief visit to America. Then we of course talked about this. The Americans tried to put tariff. Earlier I talked about and Iran and Russians and Chinese are not going to cooperate with them. So you can say this tariff, American tariff which are proposed on Iran, may be dead on arrival, right? And the two countries which will be hurt most is Pakistan and Turkey, if they put this tariff on secondary sanctions on people who deal with Iranian, try to deal with Iran. So even this sanctions on Iran, it's not sure whether the Americans can impose this. And as far as Ukraine, America, more than anything else, Ukraine is running out of men. So they have to force women to fight. That means when it comes to, again, I'm stressing it, that they are going to have a population, they have severe sustainable problem. Okay? So even in some of the European countries, you have decline in the population because the birth rate is low. Even in China you have that, but in Ukraine it is different. Men have been killed and the birth rate has plummeted a lot, and there have been a lot of fraud. Some of the money spent to Ukraine has been stolen, and Ukraine has also run short of money which is been sent. So in Europe, there will be change in leadership. Right? There will be leaders in Europe who want to have more accommodation with Russia. So if you take the political leadership in Europe, there could be change. And Americans have come to an end. Especially with this K-shaped economy, American economy has come to an, American system has come to some kind of wall. They cannot go behind that. So they might be want to have some kind of understanding with the Russians. So we'll watch out for that. So I will promote, I always promote, steady state economics. I always promote sustainability with regards to environment issues, right? And I mentioned about ecological footprints and biocapacity, and then I mentioned about sanctions, why we have to get out of the sanction if we want to have a more sustainable system.